So it's only been 8 months since my last city overview, but since then I've managed to finish this entire section. We've started on this section, and that's a whole lot of new buildings to talk about, but we still have a lot more table space. So in today's overview, we're going to be focusing mostly on these two new sections. We'll talk about some of the older parts of the city as well as one of the parts that's actually going to be going away. And then I'm going to walk you through my plans for the rest of the table. So let's get started. So this area was really inspired by the Amalfi Coast. And what I really just wanted was a bunch of different angles and kind of this half circle bay with the rock work and the water, and for it to just feel cohesive like one big mop. This dark red building sits like a really nice dark weight in the corner. It's super part intensive. You can see from the coining to the texturing to the shutters, this thing was a beast. However, it looks really nicely, and it plays really well with this rock work and just kind of what's going on in this side of the city. I think it turned out really nicely. That rock work eventually will continue into some larger rock work into the Portofino section that we'll talk about in a minute. Now, I built this staircase because honestly, I needed to cover the ugly side of the rock work and I needed it to go somewhere, which is why I put this castle tower here. It felt like it fit. Same with that castle wall. They're going to get moved. They just don't work here. One of the things that does work here though is this tiling. I love this wave detail. I need to extend it further south, but now let's talk about one of my favorite buildings in the city, which is this Nougat building. So we've got the custom printed wine bar sign. We've got all kinds of great white detailing, as well as the bougainvillea. What I love most about this building though was the fir collar usage. It was just an idea that I had one night. It turned out really well. I put the little swirl piece with it, and that's kind of what inspired the whole build. So now moving on to the medium Nougat building, this one was actually built like 2 years ago. I just updated it so that the stairs would fit, but it's really quickly created one of my favorite view corridors in the city, and I just love all the details on it. Now, before we jump to the next building, which by the way, if you want to see full updates for all the builds you see, I do have videos and city updates on the channel for each and every one of these, but you can see there's this giant hole right in the middle of the build. And the idea here is that I'm going to build these little 10 stud by 20 stud modules and fit different little scenes in there. So now finally for one of my favorite areas and really my favorite view corridor in the entire city, right here. I absolutely love how this light Nougat building turned out. I love the two trees. I love the railing, but at night, this is just awesome. I mean, how do you not love string lights in a little alleyway? So moving now to what I think is actually the best side of this building, which is the back side. And it's the side you don't see from where I sit at my desk. You've got so many great details with all of the awnings, the texturing, the landscaping, everything just turned out really nicely. But it all started actually with this dark orange building. So the idea was initially to build a bunch of different angled buildings here. And I used this really cool kind of tear away technique. So it looks like the building is really just like getting exposed and worn down to the elements. I love the consistency with the sand green shutters and just all the details and the ivy throughout. It feels a little boxy in the city just because it is sort of a box, even though it's at an angle, but I really like it. I think it adds some unique character, and I love this ground floor with this simple facade as well as that tunnel that goes to absolutely nowhere. But now it's time for some planning because I got to figure out what to do here. My idea is to put another curved building in that space where you don't see a base plate. However, it kind of plays into a larger conversation that I'm having with myself about what I want to do with the area behind it. So where you see that dark orange building and the gray staircase, the staircase is going to stay, the dark orange building and the white building are going to go. So that makes me think that I need to kind of work something into this area that's just larger than just that one little empty base plate next to the medium Nougat and the light Nougat building. So now to focus briefly on the building that started it all. This was my first Italian build, and honestly the one that probably packs in the most detail throughout, just because I took sort of a no excuses approach with it, and just try to detail as absolutely much as I can. I love the context around it, but what really excites me about my city is the beach. Coming from a small beach town in Tuscany, it looks so much better with minifigures in it. It really makes me want to put minifigures throughout the rest of my city, and that's kind of one of my goals, is to add a little bit more of that. But you can just see a lot of the details with the fountains and the landscaping and the tables and chairs, the potted plants. You know, it's all those little details that I just absolutely love to add to the city. Now, the second building on my beach is the light Nougat building, and it's a little tough to film. It's got some interesting design characteristics. I like it. Honestly, I don't love it, but now to a section that I do love, and that is the hill section. So it all started with this Nougat bike shop that kind of sits on this little bit of a rockwork platform. I love the details in this, but this second one is what really sets it off. There's just so many details in here, like having the little broom as the lamp, having the stairs kind of just wind throughout the building, and just the ivy on that dark orange, the warm tan, everything just works really, really well together. And I wish I could replicate this again because I think it just turned out really nice. You've got the sand red, obviously, and then this really ugly, unfinished building that I haven't paid a lot of attention to. So now for the most recent addition to the city, this is our sand red building. You can see I've got this great little scene here with the two old guys playing cars and the red Vespa and the greenery just kind of overflowing. I wanted this to feel super dense and tight. And then just some really basic texturing on this sand red building with the white, but the little separated balcony sort of walkway dining area just really sets it apart. So our last city update was featured in this area, so we're not going to spend a ton of time on it. You can see we've got this great clock tower, we've got Notre Dame printed pieces, stained glass with bougainvillea, trees, tons of ivy. I intentionally left some of the other areas unfinished just because I don't know what it's going to connect to. So we'll talk about that here in just a minute, but I really do like that area. Like I said earlier, these two buildings are probably going to go away. I like the builds, I like some of the techniques, but they just don't fit in the city. I'm going to keep the white one, probably remove the roof because it's ugly. The dark orange one, I might keep the shutters or a few elements, but it just doesn't work. It's just not where my techniques are these days. This was a much older build, so get a good look at it because honestly, it's probably going to go away here soon in the next month or two. I am going to keep that gray staircase. I think that's a really main feature of my city. But now my pizzeria, which finally has a roof after 2 years, and it's actually not finished. I really like this build. My favorite part of this build, though, was the top floor balcony where I used the roller coaster pieces as well as the upside down lanterns for some kind of wrought iron potted plant work. I think that was just really, really nicely done. I love the color scheme. It's got some details that needs to be fixed, but on to the next building. This was a really fun one. I tried to be a little bit more out of the box on this one using those Lord of the Ring printed tiles. The bright yellow is a great color because it's so Italian, but it is really, really bright. But I like it. You've got some fun plant usage there. You've got the stairs. It just feels tight and dense. And I like how the rock work sits in the city because it's just a nice natural element. But I did steal some landscaping off that build, so you'll see it looks a little bit empty. Now, focusing on my little piazza, I put this back together after I had the Christmas market from last week's city update. Looks great, but I'd like to change it up at some point in the future. So now for some planning. So I'm trying to approach this whole area as just a much larger area. You can see, obviously, the backs have been forgotten about. The wires are a mess, so I'll definitely have to deal with that at some point. But getting rid of those two buildings really opens up a lot for me. I do have to be cognizant of how whatever I build is going to flow into this other section of the city. So I'm really just trying to think of it comprehensive. I'd love to add some kind of a vineyard somewhere in the city. I don't know if that's possible just to get it to transition. It's really a coastal Tuscan Italian town, and adding a central Tuscan kind of characteristic like the vineyards is a little tricky. I've also got to match some of these elevations with that stair and a couple other things. So I've got some constraints, but I think removing those two buildings will definitely help and just opens up this whole area as a whole. But one of the things I've got to keep in mind is what to do on the side here. So my thinking is I'm going to do a bunch of hidden doors and kind of compartments so I can put scenes inside and view them, because I don't want to do all rock work, I can't do all water, and I don't want to do a castle/retaining wall, so we'll see. So now it's time to talk about Portofino, and for those who have seen it in my videos, you'll see that picture that's behind my Lego city. That is Portofino. So it's very much, hills backed up to the water. You've got this great dock. You've got these incredible villas all along, this row of nice, colorful buildings, and kind of then that square and marina and area. So I've got to find a way to combine all those different elements. I want to do a big, huge, like European hotel with a pool on the cliff and all those things. But I also want to have a bay for some small sailboats. I want to have the dock. I want to have it all, but I don't exactly know how I'm going to get there. So I got to spend some time planning it. So hope you guys enjoyed today's overview. As always, appreciate your guys' comments. Let me know down below if you guys have any suggestions for what I'm working on, and we'll see you next time.